Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Talk Therapy Live. It is Wednesday, May the 10th, and I am coming live to you with another broadcast version of Talk Therapy Live. And tonight is going to be very, very special because it's May is Mental Health Month. And even though most of the time I am always talking about some aspect of mental health, tonight we're going to delve into a particular mental health disorder. Um, it's one that is often misunderstood, that is often mistreated. And again, people kind of have, in a casual way, throw the term around, not necessarily really knowing what it means. And so, what we're going to be talking about tonight is bipolar disorder. So, I want to give people a few more minutes to join me live. If this is your first time joining me on Talk Therapy Live, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you've been here before, then I'd like to ask you to share and like so that, again, the audience grows and that you'll be notified of future broadcasts. So, again, tonight is going to be very, very special. I actually have a special guest that will be joining me, but it's really going to be about education and information tonight. And again, we're going to be talking about a common mental health disorder that, as I said, is often misunderstood, misdiagnosed, and even mistreated sometimes. Um, and so, as I said, it's a term that people kind of use in a cavalier kind of way, saying, oh, you're acting bipolar. Oh, she's bipolar. I have even used it recently describing the weather as bipolar because in the morning we had to cut the heat on, and then by the evening, we had the windows and the doors open. And so, bipolar, by its very name, anytime you have bi in front of a word, it means two. And so bipolar disorder means that there are two extremes, two moods. Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder. And so the two moods that are typically characterized in bipolar disorder is a very happy, high mood, which we call manic mood. And the extreme of that, of course, is the depressed mood. So, again, I want to educate tonight. I want to inform tonight. And I want you to hear from someone who has bipolar disorder. And she has also kind of been on both sides where it was untreated. And now she is successfully being treated. And bipolar disorder is no longer disrupting her life, but she is managing her disorder with the help of medication, with God, and with her mental health professionals. So, if you're joining me tonight, please put your name in the chat. I'd like to welcome you to the broadcast. Let me pull up the comments here so that I can see who is with me. I don't know. There we go. Yes, please put your name in the chat. And I am going to go ahead and go into my slide presentation because, again, I want to educate you tonight. I want you to be informed, and I want us to all kind of start on the same page. So let me add the slides to the presentation. Hello, Dana. Welcome. So glad that you're with me tonight. So, again, I want to give you a definition of bipolar disorder. It is sometimes called manic depression. Bipolar disorder causes, again, extreme shifts in your mood, how you feel. People who have it may spend weeks feeling like they're on the top of the world, which is that manic phase. You just have a whole lot of energy. You're happy. You feel again on top of the world, and then you plunge into this deep depression. The length of each high and low kind of varies greatly from person to person. And that variation of how long those moods last kind of define whether you have bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. So there are different types of bipolar disorder as well. And so, again, it is typically characterized by an extreme shift in your mood from a high mood, being very, very happy and elated, to a very depressed and down mood. So, again, the depressive phase of bipolar, typically without treatment, a person is just going to have intense episodes of depression, sadness, anxiety, a loss of interest and motivation, feelings of hopelessness, trouble concentrating and making decisions. You lose interest in things that normally you are interested in and that you like to do. You just kind of withdraw and isolate. It's common sometimes for people to lose weight because they're no longer eating, or sometimes they may overeat. It just kind of depends. And again, there's this variation of extremes in terms of the symptoms that a person may experience. They may sleep too much, or they may not sleep at all sometimes. And often, bouts of the down and the depressed mood of bipolar disorder also come with thoughts of suicide and what we call suicide ideation, where they have thoughts of hurting themselves. Sometimes it's just a fleeting thought. Sometimes they actually may develop and devise a plan. And so, as a mental health professional, that's one of the things we're going to assess with suicide ideation. The next slide kind of talks about when someone is manic. And again, that's the high or the elevated phase or mood of depression, of bipolar depression. And so during this phase, people feel supercharged, high energy. I call them, or sometimes ask, do you feel like the Energizer Bunny that you can just go, go, go? Their self esteem soars. It's hard for them to sit still or be still. They're constantly moving. They engage in a whole lot of activities. They may go from uh, taking a bunch of courses to changing jobs. They just do a whole lot. Their thoughts race. Sometimes they can go for days without sleep. So they don't even need sleep in these manic episodes. However, it often leads to very reckless and dangerous behaviors. Some people become over sexualized. Some people spend a whole lot of money, go out and spend money that they actually don't have, uh, in terms of buying cars, different things like that. Can also engage in unsafe behaviors such as driving fast and just high risk behaviors. And so you see this often during manic phases. And again, these symptoms can last from a day to actually weeks. And this is what we again describe as a manic episode or manic behavior. Hello, Linda. Thank you for joining. And then we have what we call schizoaffective disorder. And this is also a type of bipolar disorder. And what this is describing is a bipolar episode where, again, you have the mood shifts, but along with the mood shifts, you also experience forms of psychosis. And psychosis meaning out of touch with reality. So the person may experience hallucinations where they're seeing things or hearing things or feeling things or smelling things that are not there. They can have disorganized thinking, a lot of confusion. They can have what we call thought insertions, where you know, seem like thoughts are just coming from nowhere. So they experience some form of psychosis. Another form is again paranoia, where they think people are watching them, following them, looking at them, hearing their thoughts. Sometimes people with paranoia think that the television is talking to them, or the television is um, broadcasting their thoughts. And again, these are things that are not actually happening, but to the person that is experiencing the psychosis, it's real to them. And so that's a form of bipolar disorder where they are also having the mood shifts, but they are also experiencing a form of psychosis. And so, again, this is information in terms of bipolar disorder. I want us all to kind of be on the same page as we move through this broadcast. Symptoms of schizoaffective disorder, again, are delusions, meaning that they believe something that is not actually occurring. Like they may believe that they're married to a movie star. They have paranoid thoughts, hallucinations, confusion, the hyperactive mood. You also may see where there's just a lack of personal care. They can be very incoherent in their speech and they're talking in things that don't even make sense. And of course, in their functioning, they can be impaired, whether it's at work, in social relationships, in school, that they, again, are just not functioning at the capacity that is going to be normal for them. So these are the things that we kind of see with bipolar disorder. And again, because sometimes you can go from one extreme of highly functioning to not functioning, that sometimes the individual may think that there is nothing wrong. And so it kind of becomes very, very hard to treat sometimes. So, with that being said, again, as I have mentioned, I have a very special guest tonight. Her name is Nafiza Patterson, and she is someone who herself has experienced a bipolar disorder. And I came to know Nafisa because she just kind of called me out of the blue and she stated that she had written a book and that she wanted me to read her book. And she was kind enough to come by the office and drop the book off. And of course, I read the book and I told her, I said, I would love to um, have you come on my program during May Mental Health Month so that we can actually talk about bipolar disorder. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do that is because she talked about one of her goals in terms of writing her book. And I want to kind of quote exactly what she said, was that she wanted to educate people without mental illness on what it was like to have one and how they should treat those of us who do. I thought that was very powerful. And she says, so if you don't have one, then you should be thanking God for that and pray for those of us who do rather than make fun of us. And secondly, she said her goal was to be a beacon of hope for those who continue to struggle with mental health. So at this time, I'd like to welcome to the broadcast Nafiza Patterson.
Hello.
Hello, and
I'm
welcome to Talk
Flavia.
Therapy Live.
Hi, everyone.
So
Yeah,
glad to have you with me this evening. And
I'm glad to
again,
be here.
you have kind of written a book about your experiences of being someone with bipolar who didn't know you had bipolar. And then there was this episode that you had that kind of made it obvious, okay, something's not right. And it was kind of from that that you kind of sought help, and things began to turn around. So I want to ask and kind of start by asking the question that you went for quite some time, possibly not knowing that you had bipolar disorder, maybe knowing something was wrong. But again, at these moments of high functioning, you can kind of think, well, no, I'm fine. But then you have an episode and, well, maybe something is wrong. But again, because of these shifts that occur, that sometimes you back to normal. So it's easy to say, well, no, I'm fine.
Yeah,
So can you talk about what it was like and what you were experiencing in those shifts and how this very public mental health crisis finally brought you to a point of seeking help?
yes. Well, I was diagnosed with bipolar in 2005, and I had a job. I had an apartment. I took care of my daughter well, and then out of the blue, I just started going through times of being in the hospital. not taking. I didn't want to take the medication at all because the first part of it was I didn't want to take the medications because of how I saw other people in the hospitals. I saw how they were acting, and I thought, well, that's not me. I'm not like that.
Mhm,
I'm different.
mhm,
I just had a job. I just had a car, and I lost all of that because things weren't working. I like to say that my brain wasn't operating in the same way that it used to operate. So I couldn't get a job and keep a job because of my mental health.
mhm,
And I kept saying, well, I'm not taking the medication, even though it showed in my reactions like I'm always going back to the hospital. And I just said no. And I was smoking weed, marijuana, and I was self medicating myself. And because I was able to kind of um, live a little bit, I didn't think that that was a problem, or people, you know, didn't tell me. It was kind of like my mom and everybody saying, "Well, you need to take the medication," and then I'm saying, "No, you're against me. I'm not taking the medication.
mhm,
Why are you trying to mess up my life?" And then on the other side, it was the doctors that kept giving me the medication. And I thought it was some type of placebo or something like that, like you're out to get me.
mhm.
And with all of that going on, I just said, no, I'm not going to
What
do
was
it.
occurring that caused you to have to be hospitalized?
I was I was rapping all of the time. I mean, and that was something that I had never done before. I guess with me and the bipolar with the medication, it gave me some type of superpower, or
Mhm.
I thought
Which
it
is the
gave,
manic phase.
yeah, the manic phase, and I like to be manic. Um, but then when I go to my depressive state, it was like something was wrong. So yeah, I was able to kind of kind of
And that's what makes it hard to be treated, and why sometimes individuals with bipolar disorder resist treatment, because when you are manic, it feels so good. It is like a super high, and
yeah.
you can sometimes get a lot accomplished. You do a lot. And so, again, you don't really think anything is wrong. Um, but then there was this incident that occurred out in public. Um, and when that happened, that kind of really brought home that something was out of order. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, with the rapping, I didn't. I thought that I was a superstar already, you know, because with the marijuana use, like I said, it put me in this state where I was in my own private world, and I wouldn't listen to nobody anyway. And with the marijuana use, it it kept me in this manic state that I wanted to be in. So when I was caught on the MARTA train in Atlanta, Georgia, I was caught rapping, and I was also paranoid too because I really didn't know that I was homeless and didn't have a place to live. I really didn't know that my mom was trying to help me. The doctors were trying to help me. I didn't know. I thought everybody was against me. And I thought that I was a rapper. And I thought that everybody that I met and hung out with were rappers and celebrities. And when I went into the hospitals, when I saw um, people there, I thought that they were backstage, having me backstage, and it was all a part of the act. I thought it was a whole act. This whole thing was just a whole big act, a whole big host. So when I went on the MARTA train and I started rapping, I literally thought that the elderly woman in the train that I saw, like as soon as I walked on the train, I felt like, oh my gosh, like this is some type of hoax to try to get me to I don't know what their plan were for me,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a government, and I felt like they were really out to get me because it was times that I get off of the MARTA train and I felt like the train was taking me somewhere, and I had to hurry up and jump off of the train because I felt like they were taking me somewhere that I didn't know, but they were going to kill me or kidnap me or something. So when I immediately got on that train, I saw her, and I immediately went into panic mode, and I started rapping, and I started cursing her out in my raps. Um, and
And
I
what you're
didn't think,
describing is a manic episode, but also had the psychosis.
yes.
And so you were delusional because you thought she was George Bush.
Hmm.
And again, the manic episode because of the high energy, and this was occurring on again in Atlanta on a MARTA bus. And you were rapping as if you were on stage. So again, the people on the bus were like, "Okay, what's going on?" And
Hmm.
it was very loud. It kind of escalated. It almost got became a physical altercation on the MARTA bus. And the other thing that occurred is that someone recorded it, because now everybody has, and this was actually in 2008, though. This was
Yeah.
not recent. It was recorded, and then the video went viral on social media. It was picked up by national news networks, and it was just all over. And
Hmm.
at that moment, that was kind of like, again, the incident that made you realize that something was out of order, and that
Immediately.
you needed help. The
Yeah.
other thing that I want to bring out is that when you were untreated, and this happens a lot with bipolar individuals, is that you had multiple hospitalizations and
Hmm.
you had multiple um, incarcerations
Hmm.
due to these manic episodes and due to behavior kind of being out of control, behavior being disruptive, being intrusive, and just kind of violating norms.
Hmm.
And, again, it's happening so much. And particularly now that sometimes when people respond to these mental health crises, it goes very, very wrong, sometimes even death. And so that's why I think it's so important for all of us to kind of recognize that sometimes it is not what we think it is, but it is a mental health crisis. And we have to learn how to respond. Sean is saying that he himself has been diagnosed with major depression. And initially, he didn't want to take meds, that he didn't want to be labeled. And again, I think that's part of the stigma with mental health is that we look at it as something really, really bad and something to be ashamed of. And what we have to understand about mental illness, just like any other illness, it affects an organ in the body. When you have a cardiac arrest, it's affecting your heart. When you have kidney disease, it's affecting your kidneys. When you have mental illness, it is affecting your brain. And so it is just like any other physical disorder. The difference is that with mental illness, the organ that is affected is the brain. And so we have to look at it just like any other physical ailment. However, because it affects the brain, it also affects our thoughts, and our behavior become disordered. And so we have to really remove the stigma, the shame, the labels that kind of get attached to mental health disorders. We have to stop saying, and I hear this all the time when people talk about therapy and counseling, they say, "Oh, I'm not going to counseling. I'm not crazy." Well, again, it's not crazy. It is, again, things are disordered, whether it is your thinking, whether it is your mood. And those are the two areas that we typically address and with mental health disorders. So, again, we have to kind of educate and be informed and know how to help people. And I love the statement when you said, if you don't have a mental health disorder, be thankful and pray that and be happy that you don't, but also pray for those of us who do have mental health disorders. I love that. Um, let's see if we have any other comments. I want to talk about, and I don't want to hold long, is one day you said that you were in your jail cell and something happened that kind of changed the course of your life. Talk about that.
Yes. Okay. I was in my jail cell. One of my visits, I was alone, and I just called on Jesus. Now, I wasn't raised Christian or anything, but something, I just called on his name. I don't know what made me do it, but I did. And I think it was kind of,
Spirit within you.
yeah. And once I did that, like, the Holy Spirit came to me. What I know today to be the Holy Spirit came to me. And ever since then, my life had been getting better and better. And I was able to see myself. Like, I believe that the train incident, I wouldn't say that he caused the train
Mhm.
incident, but he used it so that I can see where I was in life and get some help and get the help that I needed. And and it's been changing my life ever since. Like, I don't go a day without reading my Bible, and I've become a very successful person ever since the train incident. I've been taking I started taking my medication from and I won't get off my medication. Like, there's no way. I've had times where I've stopped taking my medication and realized that no, this is medication is for life. It's for life. And and that's my healing. Medication is me being healed. And I've been going to see therapists and in group therapy and psychotherapy, and I'll just much I will try any kind of therapy if it's going to help me, or if they say that it's going to help me, I'll definitely try it. And then I have my support group, that if I'm going through anything regarding my mental health, I'm going to I'll let them let me know, hey, something's going on, something's not right, and I listen to them, and it helps me to um not go into an episode so deep, if I can help not being unconscious. Um, if I'm really unconscious and I have to go to the hospital, then I let that person take me, and then I know that if I wake up in the hospital, I know that it must have been bad. It must have been bad. But with God, you know, He put certain people in my life. He put the medication, my therapist, my doctor, and I lean on those things to help me to be successful. But I don't leave out God, you know, because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be where I am today. And nobody knows that I have a mental illness unless I tell them, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I usually try to tell people that it's like, well, you ain't even have to say that. But I feel that it's necessary for me to tell people because if for instance one of my children friends come over to my house, they need to know that has bipolar schizoaffective disorder, um just in case, you know, something may happen. But I tell people that, and they may want to know, well, what happens, what does that entail if you have an episode today. If I have an episode today, the only thing that will make me have a rapping episode would be I went to smoke some weed. But today a episode would be I've been writing. I've been writing all day, and I just been dipping on listening to a lot of crazy music, and I'm just high, and I'm just uh, and I know that the music takes me to another world, but I don't care. I'm just listening to the music. I'm exercising. I'm just high. Oh my gosh. And I just don't want to come down. And then the next thing I know, now I'm down.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about in your book how your support system helps you to maintain stability. That there are times, what you just described, that those things are occurring and you're not necessarily aware that that is going into an episode. And so it's your support people around you that may say, hey, tap you and say, hey, wait a minute, you're listening to that music too long, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, because in those moments, you're not necessarily aware that that is kind of the beginning or the precursor to an episode. And
Mm-hmm.
so the support system that you have identified and that you have around you really helps to maintain your stability. And I think that's so important that people with mental health issues need to have that support system and those people around you that'll say, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. You're doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
And that they trust and that they can listen to. Because, from what I read in the book, your support system, which, were family members, and I would like you to talk to kind of name them, but you mentioned your psychiatrist, your therapist, your group therapy, your individual therapy, and your husband in particular. But there were people around you now that helped you to identify when, things weren't right. And that kind of pulls you back in. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you even mentioned that your husband can sometimes talk you, quote, talk you down. And
Yeah.
so I think that's important for people to know that uh, mental health can be managed. Uh, Medication often is necessary, not all the time, but in some disorders, it's necessary. And so when you manage and use those proper interventions, that you can live a life without your mental illness disrupting your life. I want to read a comment from Sean. He says, yes, my support group is everything. It took me years to accept the fact that I can't do it by myself. Today, my life is an open book. Same with you. You let people know, hey, this is what's going on with me. This is what I live with. So if you see something, quote unquote, say something.
Yeah.
He says, I'm no longer ashamed of having a diagnosis. The stigma has to be destroyed. If we don't tell our stories, someone else will. Kudos for you, Sister Patterson. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for that, Sean. So, yes, we have to kind of remove the stigma and know that, mental illness just means there's a brain disorder, that something is not operating right within the brain. Just like when you have heart disease, something is wrong with your heart. When you have kidney disease, something is wrong with your kidneys. You know, God made these wonderful bodies, and sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes it's things that we cause ourselves to go wrong,
Mhm.
but sometimes there's just defects and deficits that occur, and so we do have to remove the shame um, from mental illness and embrace it and know that it's not going to go away. But if we embrace it and we become educated, that again, it does not have to be disruptive. It's nothing that we have to be ashamed about. And it can be managed without, again, disrupting your life.
Sometimes there'll be times that you may have to go to the hospital, to the mental hospital, or take a break from work, or to deal with your mental health, because once you get in tune with yourself and in
Mhm.
God, and you know, okay, well, something isn't right now, something is going on. It's okay. It's okay to have to take a break, to have to go to the hospital, to have to get your medications adjusted, or you might have to take a long week nap or something. But sometimes, like in my story, I talk about how we there have been a time that I wasn't, like, I knew I wasn't okay, and I knew I had to go to the hospital, and I knew my husband was going to have to take care of the kids, and I just went, and I was there for 2 weeks getting my medication, and I wasn't lying to the doctor to try to get out of there. you know I really wanted help,
Mhm.
and I tell my doctors and everything, if it's the medicine not working, it's not working. If I got to stay in there a little while longer, I just have to stay in there a little while longer. But now, instead of me taking the time out to go to the hospital, I instead of, if I say that okay, well, this depression medication is not working, give me something else, we can deal with it outside of the hospital instead of having to go
Absolutely.
in,
Yeah.
you know.
And medication often has to be adjusted. Just like with anything, sometimes you build a tolerance. So what was working previously may not work anymore. And so, as you said, being honest with your mental health professionals, telling them what you're experiencing, telling them what's working and what is not working becomes very, very important in terms of maintaining your stability. I do have on the screen some resources. Um, Nafisa actually has a support group herself that meets every Tuesday from 5 to 7. It's an online group, and I have the website on the screen for those of you that might be interested in that. And again, just locally here in Georgia, particularly in the metropolitan Atlanta area, um, we have Grady Outpatient Mental Health Services that is available and serves people based on your income. Grady Hospital is one of very few hospitals in the entire nation that has a separate psychiatric emergency room where that's all they do is treat psychiatric emergencies. And I can say one of my bucket list items was to work at Grady in their psychiatric emergency room, and I worked there for 5 years. I loved that work. I loved that crisis intervention. And I can tell you that the professionals that are in that emergency room at all times, you have a psychiatrist, you have an upper level psychiatric resident that is going to be there, you have a low level resident, and then you have a mental health clinician. And that whole team is going to assess each and every individual and determine, what type of intervention and services can best help and serve that person. Sometimes it is outpatient treatment, and sometimes we send them right upstairs to the psychiatric unit. But there are services within this metropolitan area. And again, every county in Georgia has what is called the Community Service Board, or called CSB, that also provides mental health services based on your income. So there's no reason for people to go untreated and not receive services. We also have in Georgia the Georgia Crisis Line. I have that number on the screen, and you can call that number, and they will also connect you to services. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Nafisa before we bring it to a close? Sean says, can you text me Nafisa's group? I can't read it. You can't read it? Let me see if, do I need to expand it maybe? Let's see, does that help? Does that help you to see it? I don't know if you see what I see. I kind of put it at full screen. But it's www.unique, MINDZATL. I guess I could put it in the chat. Maybe that would help. And it meets every Tuesday from 5 to 7.
It's
So
actually a face-to-face group.
Oh, it's a face group? They just sign on or sign up through
Yeah.
the chat? Okay, I'm sorry. So where is the location? Can you tell them where the location is?
Yes, it's in College Park, Georgia. That address. Sorry. I gotta get the address. I probably should have had it on.
Any other questions or comments for Nafisa before we go? I don't see any other. So I'd like to thank you, Nafisa, for sharing your story with us and, again, removing the stigma of mental health and knowing and sharing that you can live with a diagnosed mental health disorder and not allow it to be disruptive to your life, that you can lead a normal, healthy life. We do have some new comments. Let me see here. People are saying thank you for sharing your story. And again, how would someone purchase the book? Book is available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And I can put that back up for people.
The address for the group meetings is 3729 Main Street in College Park, Georgia, 30337.
Okay, let me put that in the chat. What is it? 3729?
3729, yes. Main Street. College Park, Georgia.
30337?
Yes.
Okay. So it's in the chat where the support group is. The book is available, and put that in the chat, on Amazon. And again, thank You people are saying thank you, Nafisa, for joining and sharing your story with us this evening. And I too want to thank you so much for reaching out to me and sharing your book and making me aware of the work that you're doing. So proud of you.
You're welcome. Thank
So thank
you.
you so much. All right, and
You're
good night.
welcome.
Let me see. We have one more comment. Um, Linda Armstrong says, "I'm proud of you helping others."
Thank you, Linda.
Well, again, good night, Casey. I see you. Thank you for joining, Casey. Thank you, Cheryl. I see Cheryl is on. Cheryl says, God bless you, young lady, for coming forth. It is definitely needed. And I thank the both of you for bringing awareness of the severity of mental health. I just lost a classmate whose grandson beat her to death 3 weeks. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Mm.
Um, so, yes, we have to, again, make it so that people get the help that they need. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Sean, Casey, Cheryl, Linda, um, and all of our guests tonight for taking the time to spend with us. Thank you so much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.